To this end, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our first Trailblazer of the day. I've had the honor of having a brief chat with her, and she really is a woman who not only is the MD of Conscious Company South Africa, but has extensive experience and insight into the subject of sustainable conscious leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Brenda Kali.
Hello, good morning. I hope you all didn't arrive here at the crack of dawn. You know, we human beings are remarkable creatures. We have created structures to live in that are thousands of meters high. We put a man on the moon, we send curiosity to Mars, and we strive for greatness in most aspects of our existence. But somewhere in our quest to achieve great things, we have made it okay to trample and stand on the shoulders of others in order to get what we want. We live in extraordinary times here in this country, under radical and rapidly changing conditions. Nothing could be more abnormal as we lunge from one crisis to another. The Gupta email scandal, every day there's something new. The spectacle that was our state of the nation, our junk status, following hot on the heels of great dissatisfaction and protest. They've all become commonplace. In a society where leaders are driven by a facade of grandiosity and self-interest, who consider personal profit and pervasive power and material gain as paramount to their very existence, where does sustainability and consciousness enter into this fray of greed and profiteering, especially at a time that sees us at critical crossroads, where the current culture of excessive materialism, dishonest dealings, and blind disregard for corporate governance runs rampant? The tremendous tension in the energy and spirit of this nation that has risen from the unconscious actions of extreme selfishness and cynical materialism of an insufficiently evolved and unconscious leader cannot be ignored. This, coupled with the clash and conflict within a once conscious organization that stood tall and proud, and you know what organization I'm talking about, it sees itself disintegrating and unraveling the collective goodwill that it has generated over 23 years. However, throughout history, there had always been one single individual at the helm of affairs, reshaping events, whether destructive or creative, that dictate the course of a nation. And on the dismal lapses, cutthroat dealings, and cowardice displayed by such leaders and the led alike, lies dependent the security, sustainability, well-being, and happiness of millions of people. So as much as we resent it, we cannot escape the changes that are being foisted on us. We then have to ask ourselves the question, what have we done to ourselves and how did we get here? Caught in the sea of the loss and betrayal of recent events, a paralyzing pessimism threatens our national psyche and we find ourselves in a downward spiral. The whirling vortex of undisciplined behavior that sees the ethical destitution of a nation in the staggering headlines every day can only mean that something has to be done urgently. Where once we were held up as global beacons of hope, strong exemplars of consciousness and humanity in action, the conscious among us are thrown into despair at the false, cruel, and diabolic rule in business and society. Where then, in all of this, would leaders find themselves time for sustainability, consciousness, and doing the right thing in the face of King 4? And I presume all of you know what King 4 is about. We have produced the likes of a Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and Tutu, to name but a few leaders and their legacy of consciousness, and it stands us in good stead. But more than ever before, we need sustainable, conscious leaders to stand up and show themselves with courage and conviction. And there are a few of us. A dramatic shift in consciousness is needed from the dominant ethos of power and profiteering to activate an inner call for tolerance, sensitivity, care, compassion, and being authentic. Currently, we have among us the inspired efforts of a few leaders who place humanity at the core of everything they do. They are a breed apart, and in their internal dialogue of how to make a living with how to live, it evolves into a much larger, more fundamental question, such as, who am I? What am I in the world for? And what do I want? And greater questions of meaning and purpose. To them, sustainability is not an issue as they weave it into their vision to shape their organizations, to prosper, perform, and pursue profits, while placing a premium on people, community, culture, and the environment. Beyond the bottom line, it is the behavior that expresses the energy of consciousness in a way one can feel and express. So what does make a sustainable conscious leader? It's this, found in the hidden strata of their beings, thoughts, and feelings, is a morally untainted view of doing the right thing and building the firmest possible foundation upon which the organization rests. It is also the essential understanding of values and ethics and reason and justice. The tone, manner, attitude, and character of such a conscious leader cannot be separated from the organization he or she represents. Companies cannot carry on business as usual in a resource-deprived world. King IV provides a blueprint and more than an intellectual understanding of consciousness. It states that ethical leadership should result in 4 outcomes of trust and confidence in the company, legitimacy, adequate and effective oversight, value creation in a sustainable manner, and a tone at the top of acting with intellectual honesty in the best interests of the company, having regard to the reasonable interests, needs, and expectations of all of its stakeholders. This creates a value creation process in a sustainable manner rather than profit in the short term. It is the plague of short-term profit that was one of the main drivers of the global financial crisis not so long ago. Research has shown that from the late 90s, more than 70% of market capitalization of listed companies is made up of intangible assets, which are not assets included in a balance sheet according to financial reporting standards. The collective mind of the board has to be applied to give equivalence to the 6 sources of value creation: human, financial, intellectual, manufactured, natural, and social. The latter includes the relationships between the company and all of its stakeholders. This is placing humanity at the core of the economy and the socio-political landscape. This is what King IV, a brief overview, is all about. The spectacle of human behavior, whether we are incarcerated or in the 21st century corporate space, is dependent on one's level of consciousness. Those whose actions manifest greater good for all are not born remarkable or they are not extraordinary. All they have done is learnt the skills to manage their own existence. For me, the very epitome of consciousness was one Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who was incarcerated in various concentration camps in World War II. By the end of the war, his pregnant wife, both his parents, and most of his family had been murdered. As a psychiatrist, Frankl observed and documented human behavior within the concentration camps. He noticed that even though everyone was exposed to the same conditions in the same environment, some people would make it and some people would not. When Frankl said that some people would make it, he was not talking about physical survival. He was talking about making it in terms of behavior and maintaining humanity. Those who made it displayed tremendous spirit and nobility in the most ghastly of circumstances, and made it as human beings, because some would give away their only slice of bread to someone else and suffer hunger themselves, while others would literally sell their own brother for a bit of food. That's the difference between consciousness, of being conscious and being unconscious. This is the ultimate form of consciousness in action, and Frankl understood this, and he understood the universal truths that exist within the core of every being. Sustainability in consciousness does not begin externally in culture revitalization, policies, procedures, leadership forums, and corporate transformation strategies, although that has its place in its implementation. Rather, it starts as a whisper in one's very own psyche, in one's relationship with oneself, in the way one thinks, acts, feels, behaves, and reacts, and then cascades into an inner call of tolerance, sensitivity, the ability to challenge circumstances and cultural norms, and to have the patience and stamina to work with grace despite the obstacles, hurry, excitement, and struggle for survival in our daily lives. The hour has come for us to realize that only when the politician and the economist, the statesman and the soldier, the minister and the citizen has the humility to take responsibility, and only when he or she has the courage to admit that political, social, and economic reform cannot happen without corrective and conscious behavior, only then can we turn our backs from the terrifying consequences that lie ahead. Only then will we have a leadership that places humanity at the core of everything. And only then will we have a society that is both conscious and sustainable. Thank you all.